The Hartley Show is an entertainment program and does not own any of the copyrighted material featured in this episode. All copyrighted material featured will be used as fair use for the purposes of criticism, comment, news reporting, and/or research. Talkie. Rockin' and rollin'. Hey, girls. Today on The Hartley Show, I'm going to be talking about Invasion, the giant CW crossover that's got everybody horny.
Green Arrow.
Dig.
Spartan.
White Canary.
Firestorm.
The Atom.
Heatwave.
So the CW just wrapped up their 4-part Invasion with an exclamation part crossover and exclamation part, point, exclamation point. Of course, they call it a 4-part crossover, but it was really only a 3-part crossover with a little sort of prelude in Supergirl. If you are going to watch the 4-part crossover and you haven't watched any yet, you can entirely skip the Supergirl episode. Not that it was a bad episode of Supergirl, but everything in it was actually in the first main episode in Flash. All you're missing is a couple attempts at breaching into her dimension that really had nothing to do with the overall flow of the story. Again, it was a good episode. I'm not suggesting you should miss it, but if you only want to, watch limited amounts of stuff, pass. Now, it's important to note that every single episode of the crossover got the highest ratings this season for any of the shows. Supergirl got a 3.5 million, which I believe was the highest rating they got since their premiere on the CW. Flash got a 4.09 million rating, which is the highest rating they've had since season 1. Arrow got a 3.52 million rating, which is the highest rating they've had since last season's crossover. And Legends of Tomorrow got a 3.3 million rating, which is the highest rating of all time, although strangely, its demographic wasn't the highest they've ever had. Their demo in the 18 to 49-year-old demographic, which is the highly sought advertisers want those guys demo, was 1.1, but their highest demo was 1.2 for the demo ratings nerds out there.
I understood that there'd be no math.
That counts as math? Is that math? Oh, yeah, math nerds. Yay! So obviously it's put the CW shows in a really good position right now. They're, especially Legends of Tomorrow. The ratings have been tanking. They've been struggling getting over 1 million ratings, or 1 million viewers per episode right now. Obviously, The Flash has been doing great. Supergirl's been doing great. and Arrow's been doing okay. But this cements the shows, particularly the world of crossovers, as a massive success, which we pretty much already knew, but now we know even more. And now, of course, the Invasion crossover was based off a series that I quite enjoyed, a DC event series, also by the name Invasion with an exclamation point. Much like the Invasion crossover, these beings called the Dominators come to Earth, and they're going to take over Earth because the metahumans are out of control and they're afraid of us. In the comic book, it was a much bigger scope thing because they had more heroes at their fingertips, and they had more aliens at their fingertips. Well, at least accessible anyways when it comes to a budget, because clearly the biggest hurdle for the CW in relation to presenting a massive interplanetary crossover event was budget. It was really, I think, the only thing that hurt them. But let's talk about the fun stuff that happened. First off, we got the first live-action take on the Hall of Justice. Come on, guys. Hall of Justice? Huh? For all you us people that aren't young, that was a big whoop. I mean, for a long time, the only version of the Justice League we ever had was the frickin' Super Friends, the Hall of the Justice, the Hall of the Justice. The Hall of the Justice. It means a lot to us old codgers. And there was one of my favorite things in the whole darn thing was that little moment where Brandon Routh, Ray Palmer says to Felicity,
"Yeah, you know what's funny? She really kind of looks like my cousin."
Clearly acknowledging Brandon Routh's time as Superman. Oh, it was a nerdy extravaganza. It's important to note that 5 of the show, myself, Carlo Finella, and Troy Rudolph, were men in black in the crossover. Carlo and I, of course, were in the 1950s scene, and Troy was one of the modern-day douchebags hanging out with who they referred to as glasses. One of the things I really loved about this was the amount of planning they put into it. all of the plot points leading up to this in all the various shows, well, not all the plot points, but a lot of plot points that they've been leading up to were resolved in the crossover, which is, I thought, required a lot of planning and showed sort of some planning. Like they knew where they were going all season. The whole thing with the issues between Barry Allen and Cisco coming to a head in the show, the whole secret message the Flash gave the Legends that we found out about, the storyline of who's this mystery woman that Martin Stein is remembering, all that kind of stuff. It was really cool to see that stuff all resolved in the crossover. It was great also that the crossover was where they decided to reveal, well, we'd already seen the Steel suit, but Steel actually in the suit. Yeah, it was a nerd fiesta that made this guy happy.
What was the line that Heatwave said to him? You look like a star-spangled idiot.
Celebrating July 4th early?
Ray made it for me.
You look like a star-spangled idiot.
We need to find the army.
You look like a star-spangled idiot. It was a good line. And they actually really went out of their way to make Heatwave a lot of fun, I thought, in this one. Yeah. You know, they've really been gearing up Heatwave as not just a bad guy. Although I will say, there are a lot of little technical problems with it, and I think this just comes down largely to budget. So the way they sort of resolved dealing with the Dominators, it was kind of dumb as hell, but awesome at the same time. Martin Stein comes up with these devices that he's made, and every single Dominator that is invading the Earth needs to have one pinned on their neck. That was kind of silly. Okay, you've got the Flash and you've got Supergirl. Fair enough. They're super speed. They can go around and put it on everybody. But that was a little goofy. I can accept the fact that he can make like 1,000 of these things because they've got the Wave Rider that can Wave Rider. Vote Twump. Vote Twump. The Wave Rider can replicate all these things anyways, but it seemed like a sort of a clunky sort of way to get to the conclusion. And the little things too, like they just come out of the storyline where the Atom, he had lost his suit and he was feeling useless. What am I going to do without my suit? They get kidnapped by the Dominators, they take his suit, and then apparently the Wave Rider can just replicate a suit now. Look at that. So the Olicity thing. Now, I didn't completely despise the relationship between Ollie and Felicity, but overall, I do think it slowed down the show considerably last season. And I've actually posted this to Mark Guggenheim's Facebook page, and he seemed to think it was perfectly fine me saying this, so I'm going to say it on the show. It slowed the show down, and overall, I think last season, season 4, it had some hiccups they struggle with. The back in time storyline with the Mystic stuff, it was difficult and stumbly. But there seems to be a potential danger here I'm just going to address. When showrunners do what the fans want, you end up with Smallville season 9 and 10. These sort of things that nobody except for a vocal minority online wants, that the real fans don't want. I have all the faith in Mark Guggenheim in the world. The guy's a great writer. His Squadron Supreme series as part of the Secret Wars crossover event at Marvel was fantastic, and his Absolution is great. So just, keep doing what you do there, Guggenheim. Don't listen to those turds, and I'm sure you aren't anyways. This season, though, has been fantastic. And one of the best parts about the crossover was it seemed to completely put Olicity to bed. We now know definitively that if Ollie was to have anything, he would have been in love with Laurel. Spoiler alert. She's dead now. Too bad. Something you may not know, apparently at one time they were trying to pull off a Smallville Supernatural crossover, which would have been the first real crossover the CW'd had. It's too bad they never did that, although it could be a good thing because Smallville kind of sucked in the end, right? Did I say kinda? It totally sucked in the end. So, getting back to Invasion, exclamation mark. Point, mark, point. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. Invasion was a 3-issue miniseries put out by DC back in the late 90s. Along with the miniseries, they published a copy of The Daily Planet, which was the end of the first issue of Invasion. The Daily Planet, their edition is Earth to Aliens, Drop Dead. It was a series that I absolutely adored, and I had a great acid trip over that was enhanced by that newspaper. There was a moment there where I thought aliens in 1989 were actually coming to Earth. Oh, acid. Much like the CW crossover, the Invasion miniseries was based on the Invaders or being the Dominators, but as I mentioned briefly earlier, they had a whole cadre of other alien species come with them. They had the Kuns, the Thanagarians, and the Daxamites. And at that point in time, this was when they were just reestablishing the DC universe after Crisis, and there were still some little things that hadn't happened yet. Case in point, the Daxamites hadn't actually come to Earth yet. Interestingly, at the same time on the CW shows, Daxam's just become a thing in Supergirl. Mon-El has become a featured player this season in Supergirl, and he was a big part of Invasion, even though in the CW crossover, Mon-El played no part. Largand, who became Valor back then, and before he became Mon-El, it's also very confusing. Yes, in the comics, Mon-El's real name is Largand, and he became a character called Valor before he took on the name Mon-El. As dumb and confusing as all that is, in the comic books, Mon-El got the name Mon-El because Superboy thought he was his brother, and he met him on a Monday. Let that sink in for a second. Just let that sink in for a second. And one of the things I find really interesting is what they're doing with Heatwave this season. Most people don't realize this, but Heatwave was one of the first supervillains to become a superhero. In the Flash 70s comics, Heatwave had become a hero who I believe worked for the FBI. And it's neat to see them sort of following along that path as he's the first villain to become a good guy in the CW shows, I think. He's the first one, right? There's no one else doing it, right? You know, I guess Captain Cold kind of did it, but you know. And they seem to be going out of their way to sort of temper the character so that people find him more warm and friendly. In the Western episode, originally, before he almost gets shot by Turnbull and Steel jumps in and the bullet, you know, almost kills him because it's crazy alien metal bullet thing. There was a scene where they'd filmed Heatwave killing a whole bunch of dudes before he gets run out of time and runs out of bullets. And they cut that, I'm assuming, just to make Heatwave seem a little bit more friendly rather than just show him as a guy who murders people left, right, and center. But of course, in the next episode, in the crossover, when Supergirl asks him why he's called Heatwave, he responds,
I burn my family alive, and I like to light things on fire.
Ah, well, that's a colorful backstory.
So I think they have a little bit of a struggle going on there with the character and him being warm and friendly, although clearly he's rather warm. You're welcome. One interesting thing that's been going on this season on the CW shows between really all of them is, of course, Flashpoint. Barry goes back in time to save his mother, and he's altered the fabric of the space-time continuum, which has had massive repercussions, obviously shown throughout the four-part crossover. One of the really neat things, too, is how people like Kara Danvers, Supergirl, when she came to the universe, she didn't know anything was different because she was from another universe. Her universe wasn't affected by Flashpoint. They were saying that there's going to be a lot more effects from Flashpoint still yet to come, but it's been interesting to watch the show Legends, all about these guys going back in time and screwing with time all the time, even though they're supposed to be time cops. And it seems like the characters from Legends have far less effects on time than Flash did. Flash saved his mother, and when he tried to restore the timeline, everything was screwed up. You know, you had a case of Diggle, who suddenly has a boy instead of a daughter. The boy, of course, obviously tying into the future episode where they showed his son as the future Green Arrow. I thought that was kind of cool. Shows a certain amount of planning on their behalf. But meanwhile, on Legends of Tomorrow, they can go back in time and kill a whole bunch of people, and it doesn't seem to have any effect on the future. Don't forget, when they were back in time killing soldiers, they were killing soldiers. But it does seem like a little bit of a, on one hand on Flash, time is rigid and tight, and if you screw with it, everything goes to hell. Meanwhile, Legends, now they are addressing it to a certain degree, that Martin Stein has affected his relationship, so now he has a daughter, and there's this issue whether or not that they should try to fix the anomaly. They've agreed, and I'm spoiler alerting you a little bit here too late, but they've agreed to keep it secret from the rest of the crew. It does seem bizarre, though, at the same time they can go back in time and affect all sorts of stuff, and it doesn't seem to have any effect other than the one time Martin Stein told his younger self to get on it with boning his wife. Yeah. Moving forward, onto the Supergirl side, it was cool that they had this neat little resolution with Supergirl. Now they've got a way for her to travel, and spoiler alert, a little too late here again, maybe halfway through the midstream of my talking, that now Cisco Ramon has come up with a way for Supergirl to travel to the Flash Earth 1 dimension. And also they've mentioned that she's from Earth 19, even though if you look at the multiversity list of the map of dimensions and all that, It doesn't really seem like the Earth you would expect her to be from, but it's still cool nonetheless. They actually gave her Earth a number. The thing I find bizarre about her little device is up until now, it's been quite a bit of effort for Cisco Ramon to channel his powers to create a dimensional breach, and it required a speedster. Even when Wells has traveled from dimension to dimension, it required Jesse to power it. Well, now all he's got to do is press the little button on something that looks like a brooch, and hey, dimensional transportation. I get it, they want their shortcut, and that's just kind of the caveat you have to accept in the world of superhero stuff, it seems. Easy fixes because they just want to create story convenience. I like the fact that they've got a quick way to make her enter the other dimensions, but it's a brooch. It's a brooch. That seems kind of silly. And that's what I'm here for. I'm supposed to complain about things, right? So there you have it, the massive crossover nerd fest that was Invasion on the CW. As always, thank you for watching. A massive thanks to Taz for letting us film here, and we'll see you next time.